This short video segment is created purposely to inform pre-service teachers and their mentor teachers about the focus of each one of the phases that the Master of Teaching and Learning student will experience through the program. So if you're watching this video today and you've been asked to, if you're a pre-service teacher that's in phase 2 of the program, then you should have a very clear sense of what the phase focus is, and thus what needs to happen in your school during the time that you're there. For the mentor teacher, we want you as well to have a clear sense of what the focus of that phase is, to make sure that that developmental trajectory is something that's satisfied and addressed during the phase itself. So ultimately, what we can pretty well bring it down to one or two sentences that describe exactly what is it that's required and what would be seen as the indicator, the performance indicator, that this pre-service teacher has accomplished what's necessary for the particular phase. Phase 1 is about the pre-service teacher understanding the learner and themselves, and understanding the sources of information, both formal and informal, that teachers use to understand learners so that they then can move ahead to co-planning with their mentor teacher to be able to address the learning needs of that individual student. There's nothing more important for us than our pre-service teachers in phase 1 in developing the habit of mind, we call it, the habit of mind that seeks to understand the learner. What formal and informal information can be collected, observed, or communicated that can help me be informed about that particular learner. So that ultimately, in this phase, when I start to plan with my mentor teacher, I have an acute awareness of that individual student and how that should be responded to in my planning. And then, when I start teaching during this phase, which we call co-teaching, when we start teaching in this phase, that actually my actions are demonstrating a habit of mind that shows that I'm actually aware of the diversity of students that are within my class. So ultimately, phase 1, I can demonstrate that I know the informal and formal data processes and sources that can be used to inform my planning and my teaching with my mentor teacher. That's the focus of phase 1. In phase 2, we move on from phase 1. If you recall, phase 1 was about knowing the learner and using information about the learner, both informal and informal, to work towards planning and co-teaching. What we do in phase 2 is we begin to develop that independence. We expect that a graduate student teacher in phase 2 of this program will immediately seek to understand learners through both formal and informal processes. They might want to begin by looking at information that's available through, first of all, just about the school in general through my school, and then maybe further through one school. Maybe there's reporting files that have been kept on students that a graduate student teacher can use to inform them about students. We would expect them to engage in conversation with their collaborating teacher to gain an understanding of students and their particular nuances, capabilities. Where do they need enabling? Where do they need extending? What provision needs to be made for any individualization? So on top of not just collecting, we expect them to be communicating. But most importantly, we expect them also to be observing, just to be acutely observant of the manner of interactions that occur within the classroom, and also the student in maybe an interaction with different curriculum areas and with their peers. So in phase 2, what we do is we use that collective information to then inform our planning for diverse learners. The phase also includes an attention to literacy and numeracy and technologies the teaching of English, the teaching of math, and the teaching of technologies. And so it's required that our students begin to show and demonstrate independent practice and being able to plan and teach in those areas. There's also a strong emphasis on behavior management. We would expect that during this phase that the teacher is not only able to respond to the individual student, but also the collective student body at the classroom level in terms of planning, but also in terms of behavior support and management. So that becomes the focus of phase 2. We've moved beyond the individual, and now we're looking at the individual as a collection within the classroom and how a teacher needs to respond to that in terms of the diversity in their teaching through the selection of strategies that are going to be appropriate for the students that are represented. In phase 3 of the program, we move on to the individual student as a representative of the community. If you recall, in phase 1 of the program, we talk about understanding the learner and learning. In phase 2, we talked about understanding the learner and understanding teaching for learning. So we've moved from the individual to teaching for learning at the classroom level. And in phase 3, what we do is we take a look at the student as being situated within a school community, and how can our teaching respond to that school community. The subjects that are in this phase we see as quite purposeful and being able to develop not just lessons, but units of work that demonstrate your ability to be able to respond to what might be seen as community needs, imperatives, interests, possibilities, to take a futures and place-based approach to planning of work that can engage students with their community. In this phase, we take a strong look at assessment practices, and ultimately at the end of this phase, there's a significant practicum experience where you'll be measuring the impact of your teaching through the plan, teach, and assess and reflect action cycle. So phase 3 becomes an opportunity to demonstrate your ability to work agentically with your class in developing action practices in the curriculum that are provided that are responsive to the communities that you work with. The final phase we call the capstone. And in this capstone, you start off or complete the final practicum experience, and then you move into a series of subjects that try to foster for you the dispositions, the skills, and the attitudes that move you from not only leading for change, but also for research for change. This is a master's level program, and in it what you will be doing is you'll be conducting what's called a participatory action project that will be focused at the school or community level that relates to an educational issue that is seen as important for the school community in which you're working. Many of the students that are currently in the Master of Teaching and Learning use this capstone experience and the internship that's provided to do their internship in a school where there is identified staffing needs. And so already what happens is in the program, the vast majority of the students that are in it are doing their internship in a school so that upon completion of the Master of Teaching and Learning, they immediately go into a position at the school. The key thing is that during this final phase, what we're doing is we're trying to position them as teachers for leaders. So they've already been participating through their action project with the staff and the community in an educational issue that's important for students as learners. And so what we're trying to do is to position them immediately as teachers and leaders, as being agentic for a positive future for the students and the communities they represent. The capstone experience really attends to the areas of diversity and inclusion that we seek to foster from our Master of Teacher Learning students, and just becomes an ultimate experience for wrapping off the experience of the Master of Teaching and Learning.